I knew that the very high highs of January could not stay. I knew it was not possible to keep on a streak of 4.5 and 5-star books. I really hoped for it. First, I have yet another sweater to show off. This is a sweater I finished recently also. It's been about a week or so. I have been working on this since December, through all of January. So this is let me change the angle a little bit. This is a self-striping or like color changing yarn. So this is all completely random. And the stitch is like a kind of puff stitch, goes all the way around. So it's kind of like a little off the shoulder a little bit. So it comes like right down here to my hips, fits really nicely. The other thing about this one and what I've learned and going forward, and as I make these, every single sweater is a learning journey, right? I learned something, right? I learned that I don't ever want to make a sweater again that I make in multiple pieces and have to seam together. Seaming this together was a fucking nightmare. The pattern just told you to seam in the way of your choice. I thought about sewing at first, but I couldn't quite get the hang of like the best stitch to do it. So I just did a crochet seam, and I had to sew this. I made this the front, the back, and the 2 sleeves separately. So the first thing I had to do was seam the front and the back together here at the shoulders, and then I had to seam the sleeves to those body pieces. The sleeves were still laid flat, and then I had to fold it over, and then I had to seam all the way down and all the way down on both sides. And then when I was doing that, I got down to about 2 inches from the bottom, and I realized that it was too short, and one side somehow ended up like 2 rows longer than the other, so I had to add more length to the bottom of the sweater. So that is where a lot happened at the finishing, and I was finished, I was done. I put it on to take some pictures, and there were like 2 tails I hadn't finished weaving in. And when I tell you I was this close to having a full-on toddler tantrum. So, learning experience. I am probably only ever going to make top-down, in the round single piece sweaters, or ones where like you do the body and then you just start crocheting the sleeves on, or two pieces. Like that's the most I can do. It was so much. And maybe because this was my first time doing it, it's a learning experience. Maybe that was it. But like, whoa. That was not a good time. So that is my update. I am working on 2 different things right now. Another sweater and a blanket. I'll wait till those are finished and like, yeah. So yeah, I really like the colors on this. The brand is called Lion Brand, and the yarn is their mandala yarn, and this colorway is called Andorian. So it is a kind of self-color changing yarn. You can see where this row came here and then I came back. So like I was making this at the same time. So I really, really like it. I like it a lot. Books. I am not going to do a January wrap-up because after I did my most recent reads, I didn't read anything after. I read one thing after that. So I'm not going to do a full January wrap-up where I'm going to talk about books that I talked about in length and add like one thing. So I'm just going to do a recent reads and then see how February shakes out. So I read 7 things in January, 6 of which are in my last video, which I'll link down below. The other one I read after I made that video, before the end of January, was a manga called You Can't Live All on Your Own by Mizoko Tsuno. This is a contemporary kind of slice of life-ish manga about 4 friends who are like in their mid to late 20s. They all live together in an apartment and just basically about their lives. And I liked it. It was cute. The friends and their friendships are cute and the stuff they're going through. But I think the only thing I wish was different is that there wasn't such a big heavy focus on romance for all the characters. I want more about them and their friendships and their working lives and stuff like that. But it is what it is. I will check out the next volume, but it was pretty decent, very cute. Recommend for a library read if you want to check it out. So far in February, I have read 3 things. The first thing I picked up, but it was the last thing I finished, was Girl on Girl, How Pop Culture Turned a Generation of Women Against Themselves by Sophie Gilbert. This is a nonfiction book about the absolute shit show that has been culture and movies and TV, etc., for millennials. And Sophie Gilbert, I think, is only like a year or two older than me, and she exactly all the everything that she mentioned, like 97% of everything she talked about in this book, I knew exactly what she was talking about, and I was somewhat affected by some of this stuff. And a lot of what she's doing here, she's a journalist, and a lot of what she's doing here is she is kind of looking at different facets of culture and the way that it kind of rewired our brains, and especially girls and young women's brains. I think the way that she goes about this it's interesting, but I think it got a little too repetitive at times because each chapter is essentially taking a small piece of the larger puzzle, and she just kind of reaches the same conclusions in each piece. So even though I'm like, yeah, I agree, reality TV was that horrible. Yeah, I agree, the way Kardashians have changed the scope of what beauty looks like. Can you think about that for a second? The Kardashians literally changed what beauty looks like. Like, that's so crazy. Or the concept of beauty. Yeah, the way porn has, and I think the porn thing, so she did talk about porn a lot, and I think really she just wanted to make write a book solely about how porn has leaked into art and media and affected the societal subconscious. But it probably wasn't like enough for this book, and she wanted to add more stuff. But it was crazy how much I agreed with the way that society just fucking hates women, you know? And there were other things I highly disagreed with. First of all, she has a whole chapter on Girls, the TV show, and Lena Dunham, and I really fucking hate Girls, and Lena Dunham is an absolute fucking garbage person. So the fact that Sophie Gilbert was kind of like retroactively saying, hey, Girls was like this great, not great, but like it was performing womanhood in a way that wasn't a way that, you know, men wanted to see, blah blah blah. I'm just like, but it was a terrible fucking show. I hated it. And I just hate Lena Dunham, and she just barely touched on the complaints, the rightful complaints that Girls was a very white show. And that also, she just kind of barely touches on intersectionality within feminism in this book, and maybe she thought she wasn't the right author to touch on that, but I wish she had done a little more on that, because she just barely touches on Black women in TV and media, how they're seen, and very barely touches on trans people. So good concept. I agree with a lot of the conclusions that she's coming to. It just felt very repetitive. I think she could have gone a little deeper. And that Lena Dunham chapter just really soured me on it. That was towards the end. I was just like, ugh. And like, in the repetitive feeling of it too, is just like, I know all this stuff. I was exposed to all this stuff, and like when I was young, when I was a teenager, when I was a young adult, being exposed to all this stuff, I didn't really think about, you don't think about it. You're just exposed to it. You grow up with it. It's just kind of normal to you. And then you have a book like this that makes you think back, and you're like, whoa, like, yes, I know that on a like factual level, but seeing it all put together in a book like this is just like crushing, you know? And I just thought about something and I lost the plot. Oh, one thing, the main thing I'm going to take away from this is that I did not know that the origin of the modern popularity of the phrase girl power came from fucking Bikini Kill. Like, Bikini Kill came up with girl power. And there's me, like 14 years old, going rah rah girl power Spice Girls when like it became so commercialized and bastardized from the origins of what Bikini Kill came up with in the 90s. That like blew my mind. It was crazy. That it was just that's the main thing I'm gonna take away from this, is that girl power came from Bikini Kill and got sucked up and co-opted by capitalism, like just like everything else, just like everything else. So this is I think it's a decent read. I just go into it, you know, kind of with the idea that this is basically mostly white feminism, and it's kind of repetitive, but it is just so interesting seeing all of these things laid out in one book. Like, we just got fucked, you know? So yeah. Also, there is a lot of talk about porn. I'm not kidding, because it is interesting and integral to the points that she's making in the thesis. And when she lays it out, I'm like, yeah, porn has leached its way into the top layer of our social cultural subconscious, but there was a lot of it. So just a fair warning. Also, the way Sophie Gilbert herself narrates the audiobook, and I was just dying at her like quoting misogynistic rap lyrics. Like, that was hilarious. Top tier hilarity. But anyways, 3 stars. The next thing I picked up was Strange Houses by Uketsu. If you watched my last TBR video, you'll know that I already started reading it. Yeah, so this is an epistolary book about a author, the person writing it, who kind of finds this interesting layout plan of a house that's a little funky, it's a little weird, and the book does have like all the floor layouts of the house, continually showing layouts and, you know, pointing things out. And the author goes to his friend, was like, hey, this is weird, what do you think about this? Why is it like this? This looks kind of weird. And the friend was like, oh yeah, you know, and, you know, I think that, spoilers here, I'm not gonna give I don't feel like I want to talk about this in a way. Okay, I am going to talk about it in spoilers, because what I want to talk about, I need to spoil it. So really, I'm going to put big bar here for spoilers. And I'll give you some time, starting spoilers now. I'll give you some time to pause or turn the volume down or walk away. Yeah, so when the author sends his friend the floor plans, is like, hey, this looks weird, why does this room look funky here and this, and he's like, oh yeah, this family probably had a child that they locked away and didn't want anyone to know about, and the floor plan is like this because they secretly murdered people and had the child murder people in their house. And I was like, what? A floor plan made you think what? And then the book just continues on, and another person shows up interested in, you know, this guy like writes it as like an article or something, and a woman approaches him and she's like, hey, there's this other house the same family was in, and it's also like weirdly, you know, planned. And then he goes back to his friend, and friend's like, oh yeah, this is how they kept the murder child in this house, and this room here means that they had another child. And I'm like, what? How? And then this woman apparently is related to the family members who were living in these murder houses and had this murder child. And it turns out that she comes from a whole family of people who believe that they need to have, like, if this child is born without a left hand, which is a family defect, then that child has to be hidden away. And then, like, once they turn 10, they have to make, like, family sacrifices. So they have to be hidden away, and they make these houses. And, like, when she was growing up, she remembers her grandfather's house. And then we have a whole, like, floor plan that she remembers of her grandfather's house. And then there's a secret passageways, and this is how the child was here to murder people in this house. And I'm like, what? And the book treats it as total reality. It doesn't treat it as, oh, that's fucking weird, maybe that's not right. No, this book treats it as pure truth and reality. And I'm just like, what the fuck? And even though the characters do say, this is just supposition, this is just saying, you know, this could possibly be it, the book treats it as like, yes, that's it. And I'm just like, how the fuck do you go from an inner room with no windows and this weird little thing to, yeah, that family had a secret child that they hid away, and that child could go from the room downstairs and murder a guest in the guest room. Like, how? How? And the book just treats it as like, that's just what it is. I'm just like, every time that this fucking guy is like, oh yeah, look at this, and like, because this is here, and this, you can go through here, and this is the secret place, and this is how, you know, the murder child would go through. I'm just like, how does any of this make fucking sense? It does not make any fucking sense. And like, I can see why people, like, this became like a viral hit or whatever. I don't know if this came before or after Strange Pictures. I don't know. I don't care. This was fucking stupid. And the more I'm talking about this, I gave this 2 stars when I finished it. No, I'm giving it 1 star. I'm changing to 1 star because I don't get this worked up often. And I was just like, at first I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. And then the more they did it, I was just like, how the fuck are you coming up with this? Like, how? It felt insulting. And I was just like, no, none of this fucking makes any sense. Spoilers over. I'm sorry that if you haven't read it and skipped the spoilers, because I ended up ranting a lot there, and I realized in the middle of my ranting that I originally gave this 2 stars when I finished reading it, but it's a 1 star. So, non-spoilery, I think this is an interesting idea, and I think it comes up with some cuckoo ideas, which if you can suspend your disbelief enough, it'll work for you, but I could not. And I just could not believe in how the characters were they were jumping so hard they may have jumped to the fucking moon, jumping to conclusions about what the floor plans in this strange houses are. So, yeah. First 1 star of the year. Now, because my January started so high and I was dipping, I was like, I need something I know that is going to be good for me, good for my soul. And I'm so glad that I decided to do this. I read A Questionable Client by Ilona Andrews. This is Kate Daniels number 0.5. So this is like a sequel short novelette in the Kate Daniels world. And I have not read any of the like short stories, novelettes, novellas in the Kate Daniels world, because exactly for moments like this where I'm like, I need it. So I read this in, I think it's a collection of short stories called Dark Nights, I think. And it had like a Kate Daniels story, a Dresden story, a couple of other urban fantasy stories. But I got it from my library just to read the Kate Daniels story. And this is essentially a sequel, and it shows how Kate first meets one of the recurring characters in the series, Simon. So it was so good being back with Kate, being back with Simon, being back in Kate's voice, and it makes me want to reread the whole series. I'm constantly almost buying the books used mass markets, almost always constantly nearly buying them, but I think I'm gonna pull the trigger and start doing that this year, and then I want to do a reread because I miss Kate's voice. I can't decide if I want to do a reread and then move on to, there is a sequel series being written where it's like, I don't know, like 10 years after, and you know, Kate and Curran's kid is like 10 years old, and it's more about like their lives with him. I think I want to do some kind of reread before I start going into, it's called the Wilmington years. So I don't know. But yeah, I am very, very glad that I had this perfect little story to get me through. And I honestly, I cannot recommend this to read on its own. Like, you have to, I gave it 5 stars because I know the Kate Daniels story. I know the characters. I love the story. I love the world. I know that. I knew it was going to be 5 stars going in. This is just an entirely personal, I love this world rating. That is what I have read so far in February, and it is only like February 3rd, which is cool. Well, the first 2 books I think Strange Houses I started maybe January 31st, and Girl on Girl I've been reading for about a week and a half, 2 weeks maybe. So January into February, but they're finished in February, so I'm counting them February. Good kickoff. I do think that I am going to try to do a vlog this month, maybe 2, break it up, but I am doing stuff starting this weekend, so I will have, you know, some footage and stuff to vlog. So look for a vlog coming this month. And I am going to try to vlog as much of my reading for my art/fantasy bingo. If you saw my last TBR, I got a lot of books to read before April, so I'm going to try to vlog those too. That is my recent reads. Still thinking about Strange Houses and how much that pissed me off, but you know, that's how it goes. As always, thank you for watching. Let me know what you've been reading recently, and I will catch you next time. Bye.